just thank you for everybody that's on the call. And, I wanted to give a quick update. The Water Blueprint for the San Joaquin Valley hosted a workshop, with the Department of Water Resources and State Water Resource Control Board staff, last week. Carla Nemeth was scheduled to be there, but, it turned out she was unable to come, but Paul Gosling was there. And, Carla, called in later in the afternoon. She was, on the Zoom for about 30 minutes or so. And then we had 4 staff members from State Water Resource Control Board, in attendance. And so it was a pretty robust program. The Water Blueprint invited, a practitioner from each of the sub-basins here in the San Joaquin Valley to participate, and certain water agencies. There was a good group of, or representation there, and I thought the conversation was very robust. So I'll just give you a brief overview of what was said, but Paul Gosling did go through the incompletes and the resubmissions, and talked a lot about subsidence and beneficial use and users, which isn't a surprise, in drinking water. And one of the takeaways was the department is having trouble seeing a path to the elimination of subsidence, or at least significant reduction in subsidence. And another theme is the lack of coordination between GSAs and GSPs. And they're still concerned that we're not considering all beneficial use and users. So that was some interesting takeaways. On the groundwater quality issue, Paul did indicate that they are not expecting agencies to become, to take the place of other regulatory agencies that are burdened or are in charge, for burdened probably with groundwater quality issues. But they certainly want to see us in close, have a close relationship with those agencies and coordinating well with them. And of course, still avoiding additional problems with groundwater quality due to dropping groundwater levels. There will be a drinking water guidance document out from the department probably within the month of March, and that should be helpful, I think. The department is, when they're going forward now and looking at 2025, they're still going to emphasize beneficial use and users. They're going to emphasize climate change documents as climate change data, and they want to see that incorporated in our updates as we move forward. And they said, it's basically, it's a moving process, and as that data comes in, we need to incorporate that in whatever update we are at. What else did we have? I think everybody knows this, but it's very unlikely for the general fund to include any more money for SGMA at this point because of the deficit of funds available to the state. So we're going to be looking at water bonds for any money coming out. The department is very proud of their Land Flex program. I think we should expect to see more of those and expect to see funding through the water bond of the Land Flex program. We'll see if the scoring criteria changes. I suspect it will still very much be tied to those of us who have an allocation program. I think they see that as a way to push other agencies forward, but that's just me opining on my own thoughts. So, State Board spent a lot of time. They sent 4 staff from State Board. The staff indicated they are SGMA staff only. That is their only job as State Board staff. They did heavily emphasize that the board of directors, State Board of Directors, would have the ultimate say as to whether, if the department says that the plan is still inadequate, the State Board would have the ultimate say as whether they send an agency into probation or not. That said, they did emphasize that the Department of Water Resources and State Board intend to collaborate together. They don't want to send agencies back and forth. So if you get sent to State Board, it's unlikely State Board's going to send you back to the Department of Water Resources until the department is pretty clear with State Board that they think you have a path forward. They don't want a ping-pong effect going on. An interesting takeaway was the state staff is trying to say that if you end up in a probationary status, that's not failure. We should view that as just a step in the process. Now, I think most of us are going to view that as failure, and the process could be indefinite. They will give you no timelines. Once you're in State Board probation, they could choose to do an interim plan for you. They may not choose to do an interim plan for you. They may just choose to work with your GSA and try to see if you're moving things forward. But I think it will be a very long process before you, if you go in probation, before you come out. You're not going to be months. You're going to be years within that process, and that would be very interesting.
I think some of you probably know on this call, but there's an RFP out for engineering services to support the state water board if they do intervene. It's specifically for intervention in GSAs and subbasins, and it's like $5 million for engineering services. So it's not an insignificant amount of money. So I'm not bidding on it, Carlo. Don't look at me like that. I'm not.
I was thinking that question.
I know you were thinking that question. We had some people in our firm that got approached by others to work on the team, and I put a stop to that. In no uncertain terms, we are not representing the state board against GSAs, period.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. State staff may be, wrong, but I think the general feeling in the room is they believe they're going to have some probationary basins or subbasins, and they're going to be dealing with that. So, and there's still the department is very concerned that they didn't have a good look with this water that came, and they weren't able to tell the story of recharge. They had phone calls that said, "Why aren't you recharging this water in this wet period?" So they're really looking for agencies, I think, to tell that recharge story, probably in annual report going forward, or in some respect, because they didn't really have the answers for those phone calls, and they didn't like that very much. The well permitting process is an ongoing thing, and I know everybody saw the executive order that went out. Few changes they did, exempt replacement wells, although I was on a call yesterday that there are different legal opinions on what that really means. So anyway, that was kind of the gist of the meeting. A lot of back and forth, but everybody on this call pretty much knows what that back and forth was. The determinations of our current resubmissions are still expected sometime in March. So that has not changed. There was no time frame that changed. So by end of March, we'll know where we stand. So that is the water blueprint update. And I'll just kind of move down before I turn it over to Amir. Basin Safe, we have Q4 billing going out at the end of this week, and so look for that. We haven't reviewed them yet. We're expecting those today. And then if you want to give the other updates on, there's not a lot, but the Tule Subbasin, Flurry Lake Subbasin.
Yeah, just on the Tule Subbasin and Flurry Lake, I'll give you some quick updates. Annual reports for both of those are being prepared. I did review the annual report for the Tule Subbasin yesterday, and I have to say I was a little bit surprised. It was a lot better than I thought it was going to be, so there was a much smaller change in water storage. There was more surface water deliveries than I was expecting. I know it was a 65% year or something like that, but still it was that was all at the beginning of the year, and I was a little bit surprised, I'll be honest with you guys, that the values looked as good as they did, or, I was, third year of drought, I was expecting a little bit more, pain, but that's a good sign. So the Tulare Lake annual report is, also underway, and it also shows similar types of, improvements. Now, please keep this in mind, when I say improvements, I am being relative to very dry years, so just keep that in mind as I say that. The groundwater model for the Tulare Lake subbasin efforts are continuing. There is going to be, the option that the Tulare Lake made was, or the decision they made was to prepare a completely new groundwater model, and so some of you are being asked to provide data that I'm looking at Carlo, that he's already provided, or his predecessors have already provided several times already, but that was the decision. In both Tule and Tulare Lake, there are a number of new transducers that are now in monitoring wells, or are quickly going to be installed in monitoring wells, and the reason that's really important is we are very interested in seeing what kind of rebound we're going to get in groundwater as this wet year occurs, the releases on the rivers, and what that really does mean, and start to make that case to the board as well, that hey, to DWR, that yeah, we might have dry years, but we'll see these significant increases. Our firm tagged a well that's near Lemoore, city of Lemoore. Over the last few weeks, we've tagged it a few times, and that thing has already shown about a 35-foot increase, and that's before the river started running. There was some unregulated flows in the river from Mill Creek and others, but it wasn't the flood release in the river that just.
It's actually, there's still no flood release.
Oh, they didn't start?
No.
Oh, I thought they started yesterday.
The forecast, the Bulletin 120 forecast was reduced,
Yeah.
and the Corps felt that to start a flood release was a little premature.
Yeah.
These storms this week may change that, but that's the current. But there is many Kings River diverters have ordered and are taking water. Tulare Lake people.
Yes, the river was full. I
Yeah,
drove over.
I looked at the weather forecast this morning, I was looking up at Shaver Lake, and if you add up the days, they're looking for 3 feet of snow up at Shaver Lake for this weekend, so that's a lot of snow coming again, very exciting.
Are you gonna disappear again?
I might have to. Oh, God.
A couple of other quick updates on the Allensworth project. We are, right now, we finally have, we've got the surveyor going out there. They're gonna fly over and get us that topo and boundary survey.
Great.
So Carla, you and I need to talk offline a little bit about that in more detail. And then the next step, was gonna get to do the geotech, but since the site's pretty wet, we're gonna have to wait a little bit on that. So there's been a little bit of the weather's obviously great, and we love the rain, but it is slowing us down a little bit on that particular project. No, not a big deal. We're still gonna meet the deadlines on that. And the last comment I was gonna make is that we are moving forward on reimbursement for the grant money that we are spending. And that is great because we'll start to see some money starting to flow back into Tri-County. And what we're hoping is that, in a perfect world, the money that we're spending as we get it back will then allow us to just do cash flow off of the grant money as opposed to having to spend any of Tri-County's money on that. Kathy, any update on the watershed coordinator that you can share with the group, or is that still in discussion?
We are actually Susan's going to be in the meeting as well. We are meeting on that at 1 o'clock today.
Oh,
So
okay.
we're looking at, since Ren had left in Oh, gosh, Thanksgiving. So Dan Vink's company, 633, actually has the contract. So we have a team, Susan, myself, and a couple other folks, we're meeting at 1, and we're going to talk about integrating that position with MLRP. So if there's any ideas that you guys would like to pass forward, just send me a text message to either Susan or myself.
Great.
Anything
Thank
else you want to
Kathy.
add, Susan?
No, I don't have anything else to add.
All right, thanks, Susan.
Mhm.
David, did you want to add, we didn't have you on the agenda, and I apologize, we should put you as a standing item on the agenda, or the only.
I spoke to Dave before you got here. He's going to give a robust update at the board meeting.
Oh, okay, next week.
Yep.
Perfect. All right, perfect. In that case, you want to talk recharge policy?
We're at the recharge policy.
Yeah.
We did send out a new, draft document. The board will consider this document at the board meeting. So if there are any additional changes somebody would like to see, please let us know in the next few days. This draft has been reviewed by legal, and you will probably, recognize some legal language in here. But I think it's ready to go. And again, this is really to incentivize everybody that can to bring water in, take that water and in a way that we can provide some credits to your Basin Safe account. So if you can be creative enough to work within this draft policy and provide us the documentation about the water that you've brought into your parcel area, we'd like to help you on your Basin Safe account. So, and Stacy, I'm hoping you're representing somebody who's thinking about it, and I'm a little surprised that Wonderful and Hancock, or it's not Manulife, are not on the line today. I would think that they'd be very interested in this as well. So, but is as it is, and if the board passes this at the board meeting, which I suspect they will, or a version of it at least, we'll send it out to everybody again, and maybe I think we're going to have a pretty wet few months here, so maybe we will be able to see some movement on that. Anything I can document to the state as water being brought in is going to be positive for our annual reports, positive for Tri-County. So that's really, and if I don't know about it, then I can't document it. So that's the intent, and I'll leave it at that. If anybody has any questions or concerns or thoughts on it.
Just to note, Deanna, that you are correct about my representation, and I plan to review this with them. Hopefully today or tomorrow. I have an email out and get some comments back to you before the board meeting.
Great.
That'd be good. Yeah, we really do want to encourage everybody. That's what this emergency one is here for. Okay, we're going to move. Yeah, we might as well move on. Might as well move on. The MLRP, the multi-benefit land repurposing. I want to give everybody an update on that. And Kathy, if you're prepared to share your screen. Yeah, if you want to give Kathy permission for that. So Kathy has been moving forward on preparing a preliminary framework for the document and a schedule for the document. So I very much appreciate Kathy's help on this. She has really done a stellar job in putting this framework together. So Kathy, you're still on mute, just so you know.
Hold on, let me try to share my screen. Sorry about that. Let's see. I've got
Take
this-
your time.
Do you want me to keep talking while you're?
Yeah,
while you're
just
looking for-
keep. So I go in and hold on. Boy, my whole career, I always had a secretary or an office assistant or IT people. So when I get
did you
into,
share screen?
let me go.
Oh,
There we
yeah.
go. Okay. No, I'm not getting into my screen. Hold on. See if I can get this. I may not be able to do that.
Uh-oh.
Sorry. I'm not getting,
If you're able to email it real quick, Stacy could pull it up here.
yeah, let me email it real quickly. Yeah, it
Okay,
should just
email
pull up, but
Stacy.
I wasn't on point. Okay, let me get that over to Stacy.
So while Kathy's doing that, Kathy and I have had several meetings along with Deanna with the MLRP group. And the group is moving forward with a core plan. And when I say the core plan, what that really does mean is that that's the plan that is going to give the overall perspective for the entire subbasin. It is going to present some of the ideas and some of the general options that we have. And then we, in a perfect world, we were supposed to take that plan and turn it, into our specific plan with our specific needs, and Eastern Tule would do the same, and Pixley would do the same. You can imagine, for example, Eastern Tule would be a lot more focused on the canal issues, right? And so that would be specific to them, whereas we would be a lot more focused on our concerns. And our concerns are a little bit more long-term as well, because it's not just something that's going to happen in the next year or two for Tri-County. It's also going to be something that's going to happen over the next 10 plus years. So we want our specific plan is going to be a little bit, there's going to be some short-term focus, but some long-term focus to it as well.
Here we go.
Yeah, in a perfect world, as I said, we would do them one after the other, and that's not realistic for the timeline that we have to complete this work for this money, for this grant. So the discussion between the three of us has been that we're going to move forward with just a little bit, where our plan is slightly behind, a month or two behind the core plan, because we frankly can't wait. There's a couple things that are looming out there. One is we all realize this is a wet year, and that means that there may be options where people may look at some kind of fallowing program may be viable, a pilot program may be viable for this next water year. So as we've talked, we're thinking about, do we need to have something in place by October, when people are making decisions on what they're going to plant, and probably even sooner than that. So there's a little bit more of a sense of urgency on the specific plan and having some things in place, rather than waiting for the core plan. And that's one of the reasons that you'll see us moving forward now as opposed to waiting. Kathy, how's that for an introduction? Is that enough, or did I cover enough time to give you
That is great. I've talked with Madeira. They actually went forward with a plan like this prior to MLRP. So they actually have a land fallowing plan. They have 14 GSAs in their MLRP planning. So I think it's pretty customary to be moving forward. I also, and Susan, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm also seeing that the overarching MLRP really focuses on outreach with disadvantaged communities and all sorts of different stakeholders. And so I see us having this really good focus and making it very specific to our needs. So I just put together this draft framework and looking at kind of an introduction and background, using my old planning thing is always the purpose and need. Why are we doing this? And of course, it's sustainable agriculture. And then looking at kind of this introduction and background, you can see where we've got, implementation of Sigma and the GSP. This needs to link back to that and link back to some of our measurable results in our GSP. A big piece in the MLRP is the socioeconomic impacts looking at anything that we do. And of course, I think Tri-County is way out in front with our relationship with Allensworth. And of course, there's 2 projects that are going to be funded through this program, the water security for Allensworth and also the groundwater recharge there that's just west of Allensworth. And then you can kind of see we go down. I just want to go through this quickly. One of the things that I think is going to be really important with our stakeholders is looking at opportunities and constraints. What is it that we can do? What can we do in this first year as we start developing? And then I kind of put together a program development, the vision. We can move that down a little bit let me see. I think there we go. So the program development, and I'm really looking for feedback from our TAC on this because we'd like to present it to our board next week. The vision, how are we going to conduct stakeholder outreach? We have a lot of people we'd like to reconnect with through the TAC. Susan's going to be leading on behalf of the land trust. She's going to be leading the farmer landowner outreach. And we're going to be hearing more about that. I know we have a land trust meeting next week. We'll probably be hearing more about that on our MLRP meeting. So stakeholder outreach is a really important component. We want to make sure that we're responding to what people need. And then we want to design our repurposing strategy. So there's going to be a series of workshops, TAC meetings, and then identify potential projects. And that's really important because there's, I believe, about $2.4 million in this program for projects that have not been identified, but we also want to be looking at other funding sources, both federal, state, and local, and then funding these projects. And that's finding the funding sources, and then implementation and monitoring. And that links back into our GSP and the success with the work that we're doing. So we put together on the next page, if you want to bring it down a little bit further. So the timeline is pretty aggressive. So today was our rollout, presenting this framework for feedback to our TAC. And we also need your help in identifying stakeholders that you feel need to be at the table or at least need to be informed of what we're doing. The March board meeting, we're going to have a presentation. You can see we've got a series of workshops, gathering information, and we're going to start plan drafting in September. So we want to have a first draft in October so that it's the new water year. So if we're looking at a land fallowing program, if we're looking at some other recharge opportunities, we've identified some of those things so we can take advantage of those. And then you can see we're looking at next March, a year from now, getting plan approval from the board. And then I just put at the bottom here, kind of the grant timeline. We have to expend all the money, and that includes the 2.4 million that is set aside for projects. We have until March of 2026. That time is going to come up really, really quickly. So this is kind of the framework. Would like to get some feedback, get your reaction. Like I say, it's pretty aggressive, but we want to take advantage of future funding. We want to take advantage of the opportunity of the project funds that are maybe available. So Amir, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Kathy. So as you can see from Kathy's timeline, I need you to just a little bit. Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Kathy's timeline, it's a fairly aggressive timeline. We're going to have to move quickly on this. We're also going to be one to coordinate very closely with both Eastern Thule and with Pixley as they're preparing their documents. We want to make sure that there's a consistent message, and the core plan will help with that. But the short timeline that we have to spend all the money, we are nervous about that, and we want to make sure that things are moving forward along with all the other grant money that we have. So lots of things to do. Can you just scroll back up to the previous page?
Page one.
Yeah, one.
Susan or Kathy, you may know this.
Look there.
How are we on timeline with developing our individual plan with the other two GSAs? Are we tracking with them, or are they where
This
we
is
are? Are
the-
they ahead of us?
This is the first plan outline that I've seen, so I couldn't tell you where you are in comparison to the other two. I can tell you that that timeline lines up great with what I have kind of put together for our whole outreach and the core plan, which hasn't been completely finalized either. I think I have a meeting with Vicky, I think today, actually, a bit later this afternoon, and so I'm sure we'll be talking a little bit about that, because we had a little bit of discrepancy in our timelines, but it's the timeline matches up excellent. My only question, or I guess suggestion, request, I guess, would be that, so as we begin to do these stakeholder meetings and output, if there is any specific type of information that you want gathered for your plan, or, questions that you want to have answered, things like that, that be compiled and given to us sooner rather than later, so that as we're conducting the workshops, we're sure to work those in and gather that data for you.
Great. And have you started looking for people for your advisory committee or because you were heading up the advisory committee for stakeholders, correct?
For landowners and farmers, I am.
Yes.
I have not. We've been trying to ensure that we have proper messaging and everything before we started that round. My plan is, though, that I will be starting that within the next week, is my goal. I think if otherwise our whole timeline goes out the window. We are already, in my opinion, behind. So we've got to start getting some information out there and getting folks together.
Great. I will say we had a meeting, we had a separate meeting with Allensworth this last week, or this week. That was fast. No, it was last Friday, I believe. With Abby and the team, and she really did a great job of explaining what we're doing to the Allensworth community members. And there was a suggestion that possibly Dennis Hudson could represent small farming on the committee, and I know that she was going to talk to you about that. And
Okay.
So if you're seeking a small farmer for the committee, I think Dennis would be interested and would participate.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. If you have any leads like that, please send them my way. I want to make sure that I'm making contact with as many people as possible. I did meet with Abby yesterday, but it was on another topic, so I see her often.
The one thing thank you, Susan, the one thing I was gonna add to this outline that Kathy and I, mostly Kathy, I should give credit where it's due, Kathy, that we were kind of thinking about, and that is between where it says design repurposing strategy, workshops in the meeting, and identifying potential projects. We want to make sure that we identify a lot of potential options for all of the growers. And that's probably one bullet item that we inadvertently, left off here that is going to be important. So the core plan is already going to do that, and we may take a lot of language from the core plan. So just as an example of what I'm talking about, solar being the obvious one, right? We want to, beyond just a white paper, we want to be able to explore solar, what it means to do solar projects in Tri-County. What are the considerations you have to think about? Where are some of the nodes that you could connect to and have maps and other figures like that that would be pertinent to someone going, okay, if I really do want to do a solar project in Tri-County or some other kind of energy project in Tri-County, what do I have to consider? And having enough information of available in this document that you can use as, it's a planning document, so you should be able to use it to, almost like a checklist, a flow chart engineer. Everything has to be a flow chart, all the world works as a flow chart. But yeah, if you can almost go through that checklist and be able to say, okay, you know, and obviously we understand that specific projects are gonna have specific needs, but we wanna make sure that, between those workshops and identifying projects, that we give everybody the tools that they would need now and in the future. The potential project, and I don't wanna bias this too much, but we are very seriously looking at a pilot program for some kind of land fallowing. And what that means for Tri-County exactly, I'm not sure. Sitting here, that's what we're trying to work out, the details, and that's where we would love some input from the technical advisory group and other stakeholders in the area that could help us come up with a pilot program that would be meaningful and helpful to this area.
Stacy, I hate to put you on the spot, but do you have any growers that have participated in any of the bidding process for fallowing, and any feedback on how that was helpful, or if they liked that process?
You said Stacy, right? Not Susan.
Yeah, Stacy. She stepped away, but.
Oh, she does.
So there are a few, I know there's more than a few, agencies that did a pilot program with a bidding process, and, we will certainly take a look at that.
Yeah, this is
So-
Kathy. I've got the information from both Merced and Madera, and I'll share that with you, because that's where they kind of got out ahead before MLRP even occurred, is going out and doing land fallowing with the bidding process.
Yeah, apologies. I was downstairs, ran up here when I heard you guys talking about this. They also are developing one right now in Kauai and going through a lot of the work there, and Lower Tule also has one.
Great.
Is it everybody in Kauai, or is it a particular GSA in Kauai?
Um,
You know, or?
So they're all different, but they are each working on one. So there are 3 separate land fallowing programs being developed right now in the Kauai at the same time.
Yeah.
Greater Kauai
That
is
would-
along.
Yeah, that would be helpful. I think as we're trying to develop what this potential pilot program. So we're trying to see, as we are preparing the bigger document, we're also trying to move this along, because we realize that there's a small window where we can really take advantage of this, especially in a wet year like this, and we don't know when the next one might be. Could be next year, could be 5 years from now.
One of my heartburns with LandFlex was that they tied it to well density, domestic well density.
Right.
And Tri-County, may have areas that fit with the LandFlex program very well, but we don't have the domestic well density because it's so rural. So that's something that I have, asked the department to consider as they move forward, as maybe a different scoring criteria. We, of course, want to make as much impact as we can around disadvantaged communities, but, all areas are not the same. And some areas may have a disadvantaged community, but their well density is not, I think the lowest amount was, 50 wells? There's
Yeah.
something like 50 domestic wells, in rural areas that, you may not be able to find that, as well as they wanted a certain amount of wells that had gone dry, and, we're not there yet. We could see that happen if we had more drought conditions, but, so it was hard to meet the scoring criteria, although the rest of our application would have probably been good, but that was heavily weighted towards that, so.
Yeah, 50 per disadvantaged community, or 50
In an area,
in an area.
in
Yeah,
proximity,
and I
right?
don't remember what the area was,
Yeah, I
what
don't either.
but they had some very specific, you got, the vast majority of the points
Yeah.
were gonna be based on that one criteria, like 40 points or something like that. It was considerably higher than almost
50
any.
even over a fairly big area, so.
Yeah,
Is a lot, right?
Yeah.
yeah, that,
It very much read like they had some ideas of where they wanted this money to go. And maybe I'm getting a little bit of conspiracy theory in my old age, but,
you know, I don't know that so much that, I just think sometimes there's a disconnect, you know, from the state, and they're really trying, but they, you know, they don't really understand the differences in the area here, and so, you know, and it might be more conspiratorial
I like my
than that,
conspiracy theories
but-
better.
But, you know, it may just be lack of information, and, because they, you know, Paul seemed very receptive to what I was saying. So, we'll see what comes out, we'll see if it makes a water bond, we'll see if water bond gets passed, we don't know what's gonna happen,
Yeah.
really, so.
Yeah.
We may be talking about something that's not available to us for some time.
So I have a quick comment. This is Kathy. I did talk with Eddie at Self Help Enterprises as to his vision, because he had brought up the community of Alpa. They are looking through the MLRP at all communities in the Tule Subbasin, not just the communities that are within our 3 GSAs that are participating. So they are going to be having an outreach to Alpa, which is, you know, right adjacent to Tri-County. So I just wanted to share that with you.
I wish him luck. Yes, I think
But
so.
Deanna, I do recognize, I know you mentioned before that, you know, the unique challenges that Tri-County has, and that's why I want to make sure that you guys, you know, give me some questions, I guess would be the best way to put it, that you want answered, and, you know, or that are priority for you, for your plan. Because I want to make sure that we're going to be asking a lot of general questions, and I have some of those developed through Vicky. Vicky's done that. But if there's specific things that you are looking for your area, then, you know, please provide those so that I'm making sure that I'm gathering that information on your behalf, and we're not having to double, you know, go back and do things twice. You know,
Sure.
I want to be able to gather as much as I can as I'm out there doing the outreach and talking to people, and that's going to include, you know, prioritize what their priorities are, you know, what type of projects do they want to see, all of those kind of things is what will be on the list. And then we'll get into that more in depth, I'm sure, as we flesh out this afternoon. Actually, once I talk to Vicky, I'm sure we'll flesh some of that out some more, so I'll have a more detailed idea of what those questions will be. But I want you to be thinking about that, and, you know, even if it's duplicate stuff, I'd rather have it than not have it.
Is there anything you can share with us, in the near future with those lists of your existing questions?
Vicky put out a draft core plan, and in her plan, she identified some of the questions. They're very minimal at this point, but what's another one? I can't remember them off the top of my head, so give me 1 second.
Yeah, I mean, anything you can share in the near future would be great.
Yeah, so that's one of the things I think we're going to kind of go through what she's put together so far, and then that'll be some of the pieces that we'll be fleshing out in the coming weeks. The outreach piece is kind of broken out into 3 components. So there's this initial outreach of kind of informing and a little bit of educating on what MLRP is, and getting feedback from folks based on what little they do know. That's kind of phase 1. And then phase 2 is really the heart of it all, and that's where we're doing the workshops and really getting that feedback on priority and the types of projects and locations and all of that will happen in that phase 2. So the questions that I'm referring to is what will go into that section. And then phase 3 will really be us sharing all the findings with these groups that we've been working with and how everything's kind of fleshed out as far as priorities, the types of projects, and the impacts of those. At least that's my understanding of it. Kathy, I don't know, maybe you have a different one, but I talked to
No,
Abby
that
yesterday.
sounds-
They didn't tell me no.
No, that sounds good. And I'll see you next Tuesday, but we also have that in-person outreach meeting in Visalia on
Yes,
March
we do.
2nd, which is in the morning, I believe, prior to Tri-County's board meeting in the afternoon. So maybe we'll have something to report on.
Yes, that's true. Yes. That, yeah, I'm hoping that we can have a little bit better handle on exactly where we're at and where we need to go by then. Because I know self-help's been struggling a little bit with getting off the ground, and I'm ready to hit the ground.
Great. I think it's gonna be a big help having you push that along, Susan. I think that's something that's really necessary, so.
Thank you.
Now, let's get our heads together, either before or after the land trust meeting.
Okay,
Sergeant and I'll be driving down together, so we can kind of go over a few things. I'll get some feedback from Tri-County, and we can get some things ready to go for that meeting on Thursday.
okay, sounds good.
Okay, Kathy, do we have anything else? Did I miss anything on MLRP that we should share with the group?
I think that's a really kind of a good start, because I don't want to overwhelm everybody, because as Susan was saying, and as you and I have experienced, and Deanna, is there's just a lot of stuff swirling out there, and we are ready to do a ground up planning that hopefully can inform the core plan, as well as the core plan kind of helping us so that we end up with something that really will benefit our implementation of the GSP and also the communities. That's kind of the goal.
Yeah, and I think I envision the next advisory committee, now that we've pushed through this recharge policy, and so I think that our next advisory committee meeting will very much be billed as a land repurposing meeting, and we should have something for the committee to consider and start working from, even if it's a set of questions or something to that respect. We will just focus on that.
Just a quick question on topic, because I don't have it on my calendar. What time does Tri-County board meeting usually meet on the 2nd?
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock. Okay, thank you.
It's the first Thursday of the month, bi-monthly at 1 o'clock.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Are those gonna stay as hybrid meetings?
Yes,
Okay,
they will. I mean, it's for participation, they'll be hybrid, but of course the
board members will be.
board members are going to have to be in person.
Yeah.
Poor board members.
Not a problem for this one.
That's right.
You don't have a long commute. Okay, so that wraps it up for MLRP. Let me, just 2 quick items, and we can have a short meeting today unless anyone else has anything. But on the round 2 grant application, in which we do have,
Excuse me, Amir. I'd put 2 feet in, I'm gonna have to.
yeah,
Okay.
sure, which we do have a project. It is the Allensworth conveyance. The first round 1 is paying for the Allensworth basin design and construction, and we're hoping in round 2 to get the conveyance funded. But I do want to be real, and I know I sound a little bit, it's a real downer whenever I say this, but expectations, on round two, because, round one, we were almost guaranteed the 7.6 million. Round two, although it has more money in it, it is a competitive bid, and I think we got over $800 million.
There was about 800 million in applications,
For 200 million in money,
something like that.
so
250 in money.
230, something like
So
that.
it's greatly underfunded for the need, and we are not necessarily a priority to this one, so it doesn't look good.
Yeah.
If we get some funding, if we just get a little bit, maybe covers the cost of modeling or some different efforts, great. I don't see much coming this way, though.
The Thule Subbasin made the decision that the number one priority would be, similar to Slur Lake, would be the groundwater model. In Slur Lake, at least, we included some money for the 2025 GSP update as our number one priority, and unfortunately for Thule, they didn't do that, so we're going to be, each GSA is going to be paying for that 2025 update themselves, which, is another thing that we're going to be focused in on over the next year and a half here. It's due on January 31st, of 2025.
We hope that'll be our only focus.
So between
Stay tuned.
between projects, MLRP, and, we've got this update coming up on the GSP as well. And who knows what kind of comments we're going to get back from the state on the 22 update, GSP update. So lots of things going on. Obviously, as soon as we know something about the grant, I think the round two grant, probably they're talking about sometime in the middle of summer before we're actually going to hear who was awarded and how much we were awarded and what projects got approved. Item D on here says groundwater mitigation plan. It really should have said groundwater quality mitigation plan. I missed the quality part when I was doing this, so apologies on that. But the groundwater well mitigation has already been done. Four Creeks has recently just released the groundwater quality mitigation plan these are suggestions that each GSA should follow as they're preparing their individual one. We haven't had a chance to look at that in much detail, and Deanna and I haven't had a chance to talk about it. So what we'll do is put that off until the next meeting. It is due this summer, so we do need to start working on it.
From my perspective, particularly with the comments that came from the department, this really should be personally, I don't think we should be doing a groundwater quality mitigation plan. That's what we set out to do.
Yeah.
So really, it should be coordinating with the other agencies mostly.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the whole subbasin is going, but we still have the subsidence plan to go.
Yeah.
I don't know how that's gonna work, but.
The subsidence is the other item that is going to require a mitigation plan from each GSA, but we don't have the initial evaluation from Tom Harder just yet. So once we get that from Tom, then we'll focus in on subsidence. And as Deanna mentioned earlier in this conversation, subsidence by far and concrete steps to mitigate, reduce subsidence is very much on DWR's mind. It feels sometimes like we're a little bit of a moving target when they told us, in their initial comments, here's our concerns, we all focused on those. And then they're like, oh, well, what about this? And sometimes it almost feels like as they start catching up, they start to realize that there's other concerns, and so.
They're getting wiser.
They're getting wiser.
As the process goes
Yeah.
along, and that's maybe not good, but the department is definitely understanding the issues that affect us better, and are looking for some answers clearly seeking what our answers are to the 6 undesirables, of which,
Yeah.
you know, they're keenly focused here on subsidence and groundwater levels. So be conscious of that.
We are still very much, you know, the Clear Lake obviously still has a bullseye painted on it, and you know, the Tule and any critically overdrafted basin also has a lot of scrutiny on it as well. So I'm telling you guys something you already know, but, just to keep that in mind. So the groundwater quality mitigation plan, we'll figure out what we're gonna do and present a draft of that for next, meeting. And speaking of next meetings, so the Tri-County Water Board, or Tri-County Board meeting is on March, 2nd at 1 o'clock, as we said. And our next meeting, is going to be on March 22nd, and we'll go back to our standard time, at 10 a.m.
We hope.
Yeah, we hope.
At this time, at least.
Yeah, we hope, and it all depends on some of these MLRP meetings, but Stacy will keep us all on the
Get organized.
organized. And as Deanna said, the focus for that March 22nd meeting will continue to be the, MLRP program. Any questions, any comments, or anything else that anyone would like to discuss? We're gonna end a half hour early for a change. So does anyone else have anything that they would like to bring up to the group?
I'm just gonna bring up remember we have a MOU with the Bureau of Land Management, which is a major landowner. And I think they're, I'm not gonna say eager, but they're ready to maybe have a meeting and see where they can participate, kind of talk about a few things. There's a few things kind of rumbling around. I can't really say too much, but I think they'd like to look at that partnership with TCWA. So let's set something up. I definitely want to get them to the next meeting because I've kind of put down stakeholders. We have another landowner, and that's NRCS, which has these easements. So we have a couple of federal partners that we probably need to bring in and potential funding and partnering.
That would be great, and, I think we should, set some time aside. How well do they coordinate together? Are they comfortable in the room with each other? Do they see themselves as competing entities? I'm thinking, no, I think they coordinate pretty well, but.
Oh, yes, because NRCS provides the funding for the groundwater that goes into those wetlands. The wetlands that Carla and I were talking about. So those
I think
wetlands,
it'd be really good to get a meeting with NRCS and BLM and just kind of, you know, go over again where we're at, where we're headed, how we can partner, what opportunities are available. It's gonna be very important.
right? Because there's that little piece that groundwater just sinks into the ground that's on that NRCS easement that BLM owns. And we've found that and it's right adjacent to some land that's owned by Angiola. And it would provide maybe some recharge opportunity. But of course, conveyance is the big issue. But there are some small scale projects that might be worth talking to them about with this MLRP.
Yeah, Kathy, we would also love to find out about any potential funding opportunities coming up through either one of those two, especially with the infrastructure money in the infrastructure bill that was passed. If there's anything at all that we can utilize here for, for TCWA. So yeah, if you can maybe put that bug in their ear or two and ask them to maybe come prepared to maybe talk a little bit about that at that meeting, that would be very helpful.
And
Yeah,
I am
that
on
sounds,
an aqua committee that's informing that infrastructure bill, so the
Fantastic.
water bill or the infrastructure portion.
yeah, I think
So
it's just,
anything-
I think it's just getting out there, you guys all know that I'm doing my 1 week up here at teaching out of the Ritz-Carlton at North Star. And then I'll be home on Saturday, so I'll be hitting the ground running. Today I just took the day off so I could participate. So we've got a lot. I think there's a lot of little things. I'll put together my list. By the way,
Joyce
I
just
got
hit
to,
me in the heart with that dagger.
She does.
hey, I got 2 more. I have 4 free passes to North Star if you, and a bunch of that. And I've got to say, last Saturday, I got to teach the children of Justin Bieber's business manager. So, but no free concert tickets.
Concert tickets, Kathy, let's go. Oh my gosh, that's funny.
All right. Yeah, Kathy, if you can get that meeting set up, that would be fantastic. And I think that would be a great step forward. Anyone else? Anything else? All right, going once. I'm gonna give everybody a second to get off mute if they have. If not, then thank you, everybody. We're gonna have a short meeting and give you back half hour of your day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, see you in a month.